Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Discovery Season 2 Episode 7, But to Connect. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Discovery, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for Discovery up to Season 4 Episode 7. If you have not seen it up to this point, you will not want to watch this video. Otherwise, some things may be spoiled for you. So, I'm not going to bury the lead here. I loved this episode. I really honestly didn't think an episode of Discovery could be this good, and it surprised me. There was an episode of Discovery that was this good. Now, granted, there were still some Discovery-isms in this episode, such as a bit leaning towards the sentimentality. However, I felt it worked for this episode rather than felt out of place or interfered like it normally does. So there were two plots in this episode, and both plots I loved. But first, I'm going to talk with what I would deem the subplot. The Azora refusing to give the coordinates to what they're calling species 10C. I don't know where they came up with that. I showed that on the previous one, but I don't remember anyone saying that. But anyway, the species they believe that is responsible for creating the DMA. And so I love the scene at the start where Adira and Stamets are sort of arguing over that, and Stamets is like, "Oh, we need to turn over to the Starfleet." As she, Zora's had a week and she still hasn't figured it out, and then she speaks up with like, "Oh no, I'll have it in a couple seconds." And then Burnham comes in, and Stamets like, "We have a problem," which I'm wondering, like, how's there a problem? Like, what? There's just something about the coordinates that's like really terrible, but Zora's like, "Oh, I found the coordinates," and then Burnham's like, "Oh, that's great, I love it," and then she's like, "But I'm not gonna tell you," and then Stamets like, "See, that's the problem." I think this was that was a great way to begin this storyline. I can't say exactly what it reminds me of. I mean, the most obvious comparison is "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't let you do that" from 2001: The Space Odyssey, although I didn't like that very much. And that was like an evil AI, which, although I do like the explanation I came up with in the sequel movie that I think is actually better than the first one, but I'm getting off topic here. Anyway, but it has that familiarity of an AI refusing to follow orders or refusing to do something. But however, this has more of the tinge of out of concern. Like, well, if I give you the coordinates, then you're going to go over there and you might kill yourselves or, be killed. So I'm not going to do this because it'll put you in danger. Which isn't, I do think there are some interesting... Actually, it reminds me a bit of Data in the episode Clues, how he refused to give Picard and the rest of the crew the information they were seeking about what happened in the 24 hours they were unconscious, because Data knew it would lead to their destruction. That's actually what it reminds me of a bit more. Data was actually right that he shouldn't have given that information. However, in this case, Zora is decidedly wrong. And it does raise the stakes that Burnham gave Zora a direct order to give her the information. Zora still refused. And so we get a side plot of David Cronenberg. God, he's in season 4 a lot. I guess he doesn't mind being a regular character. But anyway, he comes in, and it seems like he's going to be this badass, inspector, and he has that sort of really, standoffish attitude, so you think he's going to be the bad admiral who's going to come in and recommend to kill it. In fact, which is a trope, and they subverted it, because in fact he ended up being on Zora's side. And I love they subverted that trope. Also love the scene with him and Saru, where they're arguing, and oh no, not Saru, it was Burnham, that's right, and Burnham saying that she should be there to talk to Zora, and then the David Cronenberg character is like, "Oh, so you also have all these expertise in in cybernetics and AI, blah blah." She's like, "No, but I do have a personal connection with Zora." But then it was interesting that Saru was the one that worked with him in this, and Yeah, I thought this. I really like this, and I really like how it boiled down to a matter of trust. That Stamets really didn't trust Zora, and some of the people called him out on that, and he mentioned that. And I love the callbacks to Control. I love it. I love this sense of continuity. That absolutely yes, there was artificial intelligence that nearly wiped out all of sentient life in the galaxy, and so stands to reason that's a bit traumatizing. It would make Stamets make it harder for Stamets to trust another artificial intelligence. In fact, I love how when Adira and Gray came in to defend Zora, Stamets just flat out said, like, you weren't there with Control. You didn't experience this, so you don't know the dangers. He has, in some ways he has a point. In other ways it does speak to his bias. That the trauma that he suffered does make him a bit biased towards Zora. But on the other hand, throughout this whole storyline, like, I was agreeing with Stamets because she shouldn't be denying them the coordinates. Like, that is, I was on his side that this is a danger, but of course he was extrapolating and thinking that she might kill them all eventually, and saying, well, this is all, it's a slippery slope argument. This is where it begins. First she won't follow orders, and then next she's going to just suffocate us all, blow us out in an airlock, which I think was ridiculous. But it makes sense for Stamets' character to draw those conclusions because of the trauma he suffered with Control, and I love that they brought that up in this episode. And so I was with him in the fact that her not giving the coordinates were a problem, but not with him in the fact that she's going to kill them all one day, because clearly she shows affection and affinity for the crew, and that because part of the reason why is, again, it's like kind of data and clues. Part of the reason why she won't get that information is because she doesn't want to put the crew in danger. And I love how when they explore this more, they see her subconscious, and it shows that she has a deep connection with the crew. And when David Cronenberg talks about the possibility of separating her consciousness from the ship, she says it's like it's her form. It's like if someone took their consciousness out of their form and put it in a different form. And it really showed the kind of person that she was, and it was like the really way she was taking, like, not being offended by Stamets' statements and stuff like that was really spoke to her character, that she was being really matter of fact about the whole situation, even though she clearly has emotions, and that's one of the main drivers of this whole situation. And I love how when Stamets comes in, he blasted music and wanted them to do a group hug. At first I was like, what the hell is going on? And Saru was like, are you feeling okay? But I think David Cronenberg caught on to the fact that it's like, oh, you're trying to do it so she can't hear us, but I think she should hear us. And he just turns the music off. Like, and it does show Stamets' utter distrust for Zora. But I do love how it does end with Stamets realizing, like, coming to the conclusion that he does need to trust her. But I love his speech. Although I didn't like how his speech was intercut with Brennan's speech. That was a bit confusing. I wish they hadn't done that. I guess they were trying to draw parallels, but it annoyed me. Anyway, I do love Stamets' speech about how trust is a two-way street. And that if they're going to trust her, that she needs to trust them. And how that actually convinced her, and how she said, I had to reassess, and I didn't take into account the crew's principles and Starfleet's principles, and how you always do the best thing, and I should put my trust in you. And she gives them the coordinates. Like, that was amazing. That was such a great moment. It was really heartfelt. I loved it. I thought it really worked. And then, of course, Stamets comes in later and suggests that they make her a Starfleet officer, which was a very interesting concept, and I knew that's what he was going to say when he said he had a proposal, but David Cronenberg said, I've completed my analysis. My conclusion is that Zora is not an artificial intelligence, but a unique new life form. And so they don't have to separate it from the computer because it's like Starfleet regulations, whatever, in this time period that artificial intelligence are allowed to exist inside a ship, which is an interesting protocol because even though she's a new life form, she's still the ship. So it's essentially similar, but whatever. And it's interesting that so she agreed to become a Starfleet officer. In fact, she said, "I would like that very much," which was very touching. Because so she's a member of the crew, but that does mean that she is subject to following orders. She is in the chain of command, as Stamets said, which resolves the issue because so if she gives Burnham an order, or Burnham gives her a direct order again, and she refuses, then I guess Burnham can send her to the brig. I don't know, but anyway, in theory, she should just feel obliged to follow orders now more than she did before, I suppose. Anyway, but I don't know how exactly she would discipline Zora if she refuses, but I guess they're assuming that she won't. Oh, and then there's the whole thing about the failsafe, which was interesting. I like that that's how that was Zora's solution to the problem, and eventually Stamets is the one who dismantled it. Like, that was, again, a really nice moment. And the one thing, though, that did kind of bother me that I didn't like is when David Cronenberg said that had Stamets kept in his position that Zora was not trustworthy, he would have asked Stamets to be transferred to another ship. Who's going to operate the spore drive, David Cronenberg? You fucking moron. Anyway, I know Starfleet is trying to come up with a technological solution so anyone can operate the spore drive, but they've yet to do that. And I don't know. I just thought that was a stupid, well, I would just transfer you, not her. I just thought that was dumb. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, overall, I was not that on board with Zora. I got to be honest, until this episode. This episode kind of really sold me on her a lot more, because I think part of the problem with the earlier episodes is because she was so undefined. Her relationship with Discovery was so undefined, and they seem to be, all of a sudden there's an intelligent person who is the ship, and they seemed to thrown in there, and we didn't seem to get like a structure or parameter, and that's what this episode gives us, and it does it in a really interesting and really heartfelt and really powerful way. So I did love that. So now let me get over to the other storyline, where we have Burnham and a bunch of delegates, not just throughout the Federation, even the worlds outside of the Federation. Basically, they said there was, at the start of the episode, they said there was representative from all 4 quadrants. What? So there's like Delta Quadrant and Gamma Quadrant people there? I suppose, like, I don't know, because there was the burn, so you figured, like, they wouldn't have contact with species, like, for all that time. They wouldn't have contact with anyone that far away. I mean, now they have warp drive again, and now they have the spore drive where they can go anywhere in the galaxy, but this still seems far-fetched. Did we see Kazon and Jem'Hadar? Not Jem'Hadar, but I don't know, like, all 4 quadrant, that sounds a bit ridiculous. But anyway, there was all these representatives there, and eventually we get into the main crux of the dilemma, where what's his face? Aaron Wright. I still haven't remembered Tarka, I think his name is. Yeah. Anyway, Tarka proposes, says he has his plan, and I love the way, again, I love this character, I love the actor, I love everything about him, the way he presents it. He's like, no, you're a man, and he just beams out, here's the thing, blah, blah, and the way he's like so theatrical and goes, boom, and talking about how he has a way to destroy the DMA, so it looks great, it looks like a great idea. Why don't we just do that? But then Burnham, of course, starts to pick apart some of the flaws, like, well, you're using this, illegal technology, and it's illegal for a reason, because it could completely damage subspace, making it so that warp travel, making it impossible, and this could actually travel back through the rift to the people who created it, and it could cause harm to them, and they could retaliate, and so this is not such a good idea. And he tries to, brush it off as, oh, there are risks, but there are risks in everything. And so then we get this debate, because Burnham then brings up the fact that there should be the Federation, what it stands for is peaceful contact, and the other sort of delegates like Navarre and that person from the stupid opening of the season where he's talking about, you have the Monarch captive. I hate that scene. Anyway, he speaks that that we need to trust, we need to make contact, we can't just go in the guns a-blazing, and we shouldn't do this thing that could bring a bigger retaliation, which is a legitimate concern, that if you try to piss off this really advanced species, that they might retaliate in an even worse way. And the better thing to do is try to make peaceful contact first and try to get more information, and then once you gather more information, you'll know how best to respond to the situation. And I love how when Booker is arguing with Burnham over it, she's like, and he says, how is this any different than the Klingons? And she said, well, the Klingons, we understood them, we knew their culture, we knew everything about them. With this species, we know zero. So we don't know how best to respond. And that is exactly right. And I love this philosophical debate because I don't think there is any clear answer. I don't know, part of me thinks this episode is trying to tell you that the clear answer is to go with Burnham's solution and do Federation principles of first contact, of trying to understand. However, the episode also makes a really good argument on the other side that while they're sitting around, trying to make contact, billions of people could die. So that is a legitimate risk and a legitimate concern. And I love how they turn this into a personal rift between Michael Burnham and Book, because Book, of course, is really on the side of Tarka and really wants to just eliminate his thing. And I love how when Book goes to Tarka, it's like, you got to convince them, because Burnham spoke up about making peaceful contact. He's like, you got to convince them that's not the right to do. And Tarka eventually says, no, I think you should be the one to speak out. But then we get this thing, which I don't know how much I like this one, where apparently Tarka found this other parallel universe that's like a perfect, serene universe. It's like the opposite of the mirror universe. And he had a scientist friend who may be dead or may be in this universe waiting for him, and so he really wants to get to this other universe. And so having the power source, so he has an ulterior motive for getting destroying the DMA, because it would give him access to his power source that would let him go to this parallel universe. That kind of muddies the whole situation for me. I personally think Tarka could have just wanted to destroy the DMA because he wants to destroy the DMA, and he's a scientific genius who's egotistical and wants to be the one who saves everyone. That's all the motivation you need. Adding this extra thing about a parallel universe, I think that's unnecessary, and I'm still a bit iffy on that, but we'll see where they go with this. Anyway, so then we get the speech that Book makes, which I thought was amazing. Again, this is why I'm not so convinced that this show is trying to tell you Burnham's absolutely right, because they are presenting both sides, and Book's speech is really powerful, and it does make a lot of sense too. He's talks about his pain and suffering and how he wants to ensure, he's like, I pray that none of you experience the same thing that I did, and he wants to make sure that billions don't die, which is a legitimate concern. It's an absolutely legitimate concern. And so and is saying, and basically saying there's risks in anything, which is absolutely true. In fact, I would go as bold to say that I could easily see someone like Captain Kirk being on Book's side in this situation, because he's always had the position, there's always risks in everything, but we need to act, we need to do it in order to save lives. So I do think this is a truly gray area where there is no right and there is no wrong. And I love that. That's so good. And moreover, it presents this personal conflict between Book and Burnham, where the two of them still love each other, but they are on opposing sides, and even their private conversation, when Burnham, says that she doesn't agree with him, but that even she was like trying to do in general terms. Oh, even those who don't agree, we all need to work together once the decision's been made. And Book's like, I don't think that works that way, which is quite powerful. And then, so Book's speech was really powerful, and then it came time for Burnham to make her counter speech, and I knew, like, the way she hesitated, it almost made me think that she might not actually speak, and you could tell. And this was what made it such a great, powerful, emotional story, because you could tell that she really didn't want to. That she did not want to speak out against Book. She loved Book. She doesn't want to be the one who opposes him in public like this. And so I think she very nearly didn't because of that. And you could see the president looking at her. Are you sure no one wants to speak? And eventually she had to be like, okay, fine, yes. Because if I don't speak, and because Book's speech was so powerful, so she knew that if she didn't speak, then they would definitely vote to destroy the DMA, which of course she really doesn't want to do, but at the same time, she didn't want to oppose the person she loved. It was just such a powerful, such a great moment, and then eventually, yes, she does speak, and of course she gives a great Burnham speech, and again, this shouldn't have been undercut with Stamets thing. That would have been annoying. They should have done them separately, but whatever. And her speech, of course, was powerful enough. And it was a good speech, too. All credit to her. She was making really good points. Again, I don't think there's any clear right or wrong in this situation. And so her speech did convince everyone, and not everyone, but the majority at least. And so the majority, you can tell there was a few people who were really, I refuse to vote. But the majority of people did vote for peaceful contact, and then Burnham wanted to run the book, but of course the president stepped in the way. Oh, I need you right now, of course. And then this is something I really did not expect. I did not expect. Maybe some other people watching this will say, "Oh, I knew this was going to happen," but for me, I did not expect to see Book and Tarka run off together, and how Tarka got a spore drive prototype, which he could, he's a scientist, and got it to integrate into Book's ship so they could run off and do their plan anyway, regardless, and go rogue and destroy the DMA without anyone's permission. And it was such a powerful moment, particularly when he beams the cat over to Burnham's corner, and Burnham sees the cat with a note saying, "I love you, Michael, please take care of her." Of course she knows something's up, and how she beams to the shuttle bay just in time to see Book's ship leave and Spore drive away. That was such a powerful ending, especially since this is the mid-season finale. God, it actually has me very, very excited for Discovery, and that's something I have not been in years, in a very long time. I don't know if I've ever been this excited for Discovery to return. So yeah, it's very effective. Now then, I do need to speak about the preview we got for the mid-season, for the next part of the season, which is not returning until February 10th. Whatever. Which, it kind of sucks that they just sprung this on you at the last moment. Like last week was when they first announced it, which I think was a dick move, but whatever. So anyway, seeing the preview for it, it looks really good. Like I don't think I've ever saw a preview for Discovery where I'm like, that looks really good. Maybe season 3, but that turned out to be a dud. But hopefully, actually season 3 I was just cautiously optimistic. Here, I'm more than that. This looks good. It looks like this could be the best season of Discovery ever. Of course, I'm just setting myself up for disappointment, but hopefully, yeah, that the whole concept of Burnham having to track down and stop her own lover like he's a fugitive, even though he has a valid point of view. It's good. That's the kind of great storytelling that Discovery has not done. So, my rating for But to Connect out of 10, I'm going to give this a 10. The best. I know I might be being a bit overzealous because I'm not used to Discovery being this good. So maybe it deserves more of a 9, but the hell with it. I'm going to give it a 10 because I love this episode. I do think this is one of the best episodes of Discovery. This is the best episode of Discovery in the past 2 years. Out of season 3 and 4, this is easily the best. I think there hasn't been an episode this good since that one where Miriam died. Which was another one of my favorites. So yeah, since season 2, I don't think Discovery has been this good. So I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10, the best, because it was so good. Anyway, that is it for my review of Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 7. As I said, unfortunately, there's a freaking mid-season break, so I'll have to wait till February to continue covering Discovery, but in the meantime, Prodigy's going to return apparently, so I'll be covering Prodigy on this channel weekly as well. Of course, I'm finishing up my coverage of The Expanse Season 6, and I also cover other shows on this channel such as Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.